Welcome back everyone, Oz here, and today I've got some r/PettyRevenge for you all. As per usual, I'll narrate the post, give you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Method right now 00. I hunted down my credit card thieves. Cross post, delete if not allowed. Yesterday morning, I received an email notification from my credit card company stating a transaction for $1,500 at MedSpa was declined, and another stating it was approved. I immediately called said CC company to report the fraudulent charge. Turns out, my card has had fraudulent charges over the past 3 weeks, with purchases including various hotels in my area, eBay, gas station, self-storage, and moving truck rental. I rarely used this card. The last time I used it in person was in February and last online purchase in 2023. Fortunately, my credit card company flagged all recent charges and closed my card. This morning, my significant other had a doctor's appointment in the same city as a hotel purchase made yesterday. After the doctor, boyfriend asked me what I thought we should do today. I said, well, you wanted to shop for some new shoes, or we can swing by this hotel up the street and see if the credit card thieves are still there. The amount seemed like it would cover 2 or 3 days, so boyfriend and I go to the hotel to see if the people were still checked in and to let them know the card was stolen and the charges would be reversed. The front desk lady was pissed. She was able to find the reservation by card number and noted that the person had kept charging cards to pay for the room. Of course, they didn't tell me the room number, much to my boyfriend's dismay. Boyfriend was hoping to get a room key to take their stuff. LOL, right. I called the credit card company and they asked me to call the police. I called the sheriff department and they arrived within 20 minutes. I was surprised they even came. I gave them my report, ID, and credit card. The deputy asked if I wanted to prosecute. I said yes. But can I prosecute if my credit card company is going to refund all the money anyway? Then, they went inside and spoke to the front desk who provided them with the invoice. Boyfriend and I waited outside in the front of the lobby. Then, through the automatic sliding doors, I hear the front desk lady yell, "It's him! He's trying to leave!" Light Hispanic dude with a bull terrier and several bags gets placed in cuffs. He gets brought outside, searched, and doggo gets cuffed to a trash. Oh, poor buddy. Then, another little Asian guy gets brought out in cuffs. A third deputy arrives and brings out a fancy Asian lady with a face full of fillers, 2 suitcases, and a Coach backpack. 4 officers start going through the backpacks on the hood of the car. We see passports, IDs, credit cards. They pull out a big credit card printing machine and a laptop. Then, they pull out a big Ziploc filled with crystal meth and the cop exclaims, "Here we go!" and turns towards us to flash a smile. 2 of them go back to search the hotel room and bring down 2 bags with more drugs, a scale, 4 car keys, and a big wad of cash. Unfortunately, none of the cars were in the parking lot and the perp said they had been traveling by Uber. The cops contacted one of the thief's friends to pick up the dog, who arrived pretty quickly. It was an older Asian dude with tattoos, flashy jewelry, and an old luxury SUV. Don't worry, we got his pics and license plates. All these guys seem like characters out of The Brothers' Son. The deputies then gave me all the paperwork and told me that one of the guys said they stole my credit card off the internet. I would have guessed they used a scanner while I was at the fair a few weeks ago. I find that so weird because I haven't used my card online in almost a year. Apparently, they made a physical card that had a different name on it. Anywho, I walk inside to give the front desk a copy of the incident number, and then I remembered something else. I remember seeing another transaction for a storage unit that was made yesterday, and 2 charges at a rental truck company. I go back outside and talk to the sheriff and ask him if he wanted me to try to figure out where that was. I was able to track down the storage location to a city about 15 minutes away, but no can do on the trucks. I called the storage place and they confirmed that a payment was made with my card, but wouldn't give me the unit number. From there, the sheriff said that it was out of their jurisdiction and they would try to get a search warrant, but that might take a while. However, it might be helpful if I made a police report with the other city. So with nothing better to do, I drove my ass over there and made another police report regarding the storage unit. That's it for now. We'll update if anything else happens, but in the meantime, I'll call up the credit bureau to freeze my social security and tell my dog to be on alert and load magazines. Any other suggestions? Also, Cooper asked if I wanted to prosecute, but that was before the drug bust. So do I need a lawyer? Anyways, thanks in advance. You're probably not going to need a lawyer because I believe the state will have a prosecutor go after them and they'll probably just have you provide witness testimony. In my experience, lawyers are only needed if you're defending yourself criminally or if you're in a civil case. But this was definitely the right way to handle this. I was worried that they would confront the people themselves, because that could have gone horribly, especially with the fact that they have methamphetamine and the tools to essentially commit fraud on a near expert level. I would say they would have probably been armed. So thank God they actually decided to go with calling the cops instead of confronting them at the door of the room, because do not do that. In any circumstance where one of your possessions are stolen, whether it's a cell phone, a car, a credit card, or something along those lines, and if you know where it is, do not go after it yourself. Inform local authorities, because you're probably going to get yourself seriously injured in the process of trying to recover it. Nandor de Larentis. I've taken my brother's cemetery plots. They won't know until one of them dies. My mother never shared the details of her will with me or anyone in the family. When she died, we all learned she had made me executor of her will. My two brothers were very upset that their little sister, who has an MBA and a solid family life, was picked over them. Neither of them finished college, and one is an who hasn't left his house in years. Mom left her house to the two brothers with the instructions that I sell the house valued at around $250,000 and divide the money between them. All her cash was to be divided between the heirs. Her other property was a small vacation home where her and my dead sister's ashes would be scattered. She left it to me and my dead sister's children. 30 or so years earlier, one of the brothers had told her he wanted to build his own cabin, so she deeded him an adjoining lot. When she died, it was still an empty lot. He convinced one of my nieces to sell him her share of the cabin for $1, and not to tell any of their heirs before the paperwork was signed. The only way I found out was because he posted on Facebook, "I'm now a proud partial owner of my family's mountain cabin. According to my lawyer, no one can keep me out of it." We aren't friends on Facebook, but some mutual relatives are, and they alerted me to what had happened. In the state we lived in, even a financial ownership allows the partial owners to enter the property anytime without restrictions. There were some very ugly emails between him and my niece when she tried to get the property back, and he admitted he did this out of spite to hurt me and make sure my family and I didn't get to enjoy the property. Brother 2 had emailed my niece several times and told her he was so proud of her for selling to her uncle, and he'd never seen his brother so happy. Mom's will was written so that the estate would retain ownership of all property, including real estate, until the probate process was complete. Brother didn't understand that and thought he would have immediate ownership. His lawyer didn't read the will very well and thought the same thing. The only way to get the share of the cabin away from him was for my niece to refuse her share of the inheritance. Even with that, it cost the $600,000 estate, including the house she left to them, roughly $30,000 in attorney fees to fight this. But we won, and the cabin is safe. I don't know how much he had to pay his lawyers, but it was a lot of money. The situation drug on for months. The property Mom had given him sits directly across from the cabin. Out of spite and anger, he clearly cut the property Mom had given him and brought in over 100 tons of gravel, so the wooded area now looks like a gravel parking lot. This is directly next to the place where Mom and sister's ashes were scattered. The brothers had asked for the 3 burial plots next to my dad. They adored and idolized him. Mom is scattered at the cabin and she won't be using them. So I gave them the cemetery plot paperwork. But before probate ended, I had the plots put in my name and they're legally mine now. The paperwork they have is worthless, but they don't know that. I didn't tell the brothers and they won't find out until one of them dies and they can't be buried next to Dad. Honestly, I know Dad wouldn't have approved of what they did. He loved Mom and would be upset her ashes are scattered next to a gravel-covered lot, not the woods she loved. I haven't told them what I've done. Screw them, they wasted money from her estate and made Mom's resting place look horrible. They don't deserve to be buried next to Dad. The best part is that gravel is temporary. If you really want to restore the resting place of your mother, cover the gravel. Buy some local wildflower seeds and scatter them about. Within roughly, it might take a year or so, you won't even remember the gravel plot. Sadly, you won't be able to put any dirt or mulch on it because technically it isn't your property, but there's not a lot stopping you from scattering local flora. Just don't get caught. After the shit they pulled, especially with their own mother's resting place, they don't deserve to have their resting place be comfortable. Also, I don't know how old that niece was, but if she was a child and he basically conned her for a plot of land for $1, that's fucked up and that's evil. I mean, it's already evil because he very clearly manipulated them, but still. If it was a child, there is just an extra level of malice and fuckery attached to it. Tiger Eyes 121. Island Revenge. My ex-best friend was a full-blown grandiose narcissist. I'm talking about someone who refers to herself unironically as an alpha. She's a dive instructor, and she was given the nickname Hitler at her dive school, and she was proud of that. She's very charismatic and has created a small cult around her on the island she works on. These people are, anyway, cut off from the rest of the world, and every year when I visit the island, I've seen them getting more and more in her service. And those who don't fall in line become social pariahs. It's a small island with a few permanent residents, and no one wants to be socially isolated, so they toe her line. Well, today an old dean of mine reached out to me. She knows I'm an active diver, and she wanted some advice on who to dive with on this island as she's planning a trip. Now, for over the last decade, I have been steadily channeling work Alpha's way. I did the math, and thanks to me, over the years, 14 people have dived with her. My friends and family, and at least 6 of those, have been repeat customers. Diving is an expensive hobby, and she's made a pretty package through me. She also gets commissions on accommodations, etc. when people book through her. Despite all this, she has behaved very unprofessionally with me on my last several trips, doing things like screaming at me in the dive shop or on the boat in front of other people, and one time, even kicking me off the boat for someone else because she double booked. Totally unprovoked and totally unprofessional. It's almost like she was testing how far she could push me. Well, she pushed me too far. I snapped and ended the relationship. So I sent my dean a detailed email about the best dive schools, where to stay, where to eat, how to get around, etc. I ranked Alpha's dive school 3rd in my list, a ranking TripAdvisor agrees with, and I left a small note at the bottom. If you do dive there, steer clear of this instructor. It's not much, but it feels good. After 10 plus years of championing someone and getting treated like shit in return, it feels like a victory. Honestly, to tie the bow on top, tell her you're not going to send clients her way anymore. I've had to deal with people like this before, and let me just tell you what, it is definitely worth cutting types like this out of your life, permanently. White Van Mank. Steal my stuff? I'll steal your door. A friend of mine had issues with one of his neighbors. They were noisy, continuously drunk or stoned. Believed they were untouchable. Stole really minor things like potted plants, bins, benches, garden furniture, basically anything that was easily moved and not screwed down. Ah yes, the average Fallout playthrough. After many times of lifting the fence panels up and taking back the items that they took, he got annoyed with the balls on them and the lack of any real police response. Middle of the summer, they had a habit of having parties, loud music till all hours, and generally scum, roaming around the local area causing trouble. My mate had nipped home during his break and noticed that the front door was open and that one of the parties was going on in the rear of the house. At the time, he worked as a day laborer for an independent carpenter. A plan was hatched. They opened the rear doors of their plain white van. He ran over with an impact driver and proceeded to remove the screws from the hinges and steal the door and throw it in the van and drive off. Plan accomplished! They dumped the door in an on-site skip. When he returned that evening, the door was still missing. Was replaced the next morning with a pallet with a mattress stuck up behind it. Eventually, someone probably stole a piece of chipboard that was screwed in place. I can just imagine after all the guests leave, just looking at the now empty door frame, just what the fuck? What the fuck? And like, hey, if you're fast enough with an impact driver, you can take a door off pretty quick. It's only 9 screws, maybe 12 give or take. Like, a skilled carpenter could definitely take a door down in probably 15 seconds. See, but my curiosity is if they kept stealing stuff from their property, or if they kind of realized like, oh, it's not fun to have your shit stolen. And they probably think it was one of the party goers too, because that's such a weird thing. Like, who the fuck steals a door is probably what's going through their head. Big J Sunshine. You want me to pay for repairs to the HOA roof? You can't handle the HOA roof. Well, over a decade ago, I lived under the nasty, petty, vindictive thumb of an HOA. I mean, who hasn't, am I right? I had clashed with the board for years over illegal special assessments and failure to ever enforce rules against board members' friends. My crowning achievement was forcing them to either grant every homeowner full, unfettered access to all roof patios or limit roof repair expenses only to those units who wrongfully claimed the roof areas were a part of their units, despite the fact that their deed did not grant them private rights to roof areas. Each homeowner on the top floor had fenced off their roof space, and in one instance, built an unpermitted sunroom. Okay, now I'm deeply confused as to what kind of HOA they have because they all share a roof space? I have so many questions as to what this means. Additionally, I reported the sunroom to the city and it had to be removed because no permit, too heavy for the roof, causing damage to the roof. The same damage that the board wanted everyone to pay for. It was a lot of time and energy just to fight people trying to screw us. Eventually, I was ready to sell my condo. Oh, okay. I got you. Okay, it's a condo HOA. That makes a lot of sense. Because I was selling for sale by owner, I did my own marketing. As part of my marketing, I bought the domain of my unit number plus street name and built a website for the unit/sale. While doing so, I noticed the .com/net/org domains for the building street address were available for purchase. So I snagged those too, as well as street number, street name, HOA.com/org/net. And I sold the place and moved out. 6 months or so later, I received an email from the HOA board president asking if I owned those domains. I replied that I did. She told me they belonged to the property, and now that I didn't live there, I had to turn them over. I told her she needed to replace the HOA's lawyers if they told her that, and the board was welcome to purchase the domains from me for the tidy sum of $5,000. Why $5,000? Because that's the amount they wanted each homeowner to pay in special assessments for the roof repairs needed from the illegal sunroom and the fencing. Too long didn't read. After fighting HOA about illegal activity and special assessments, I bought up all the domain names with building addresses. Then I moved. When HOA demanded I give those domains up, I told them to kick dirt or pay me. This had to have been done during the .com bubble. For those of you who are unaware of what the .com bubble was, basically when domain name registration was becoming more commonplace, a lot of people rushed to, register domains of literally anything they could possibly think of that could eventually be owned by a large company or desired by a large company. This led to prices being inflated by an obscene amount and created the .com bubble. One of my favorite examples from the .com bubble that's still around today is OJ.com. It still exists, and it is still equally as horrible as the day that I found it. But the reason why I wonder if this was during the .com bubble is because this guy was smart enough to essentially register the domain, then maybe 6 months later the HOA is like, you know what, we should really get in on that whole internet thing. Then they look up and see the fact that the domain's taken, and bada booey, $5,000 for that. Hell, even Elon was a part of the whole .com bubble phase. There's a reason why he was sitting on X.com for 25 years? I have no idea. Effidi umbrimidi. One of my good friend's wedding gifts. So one of my good friends married the worst person. Background, the first time I met her, she came off as very arrogant. My friend invited the new girl he was dating to trivia night at the pub we regular at. She argued every answer the group agreed on. Normally, our group finishes trivia night in the top 3. There was, at the time, 7 of us, and our combined knowledge pretty much covered all categories. This night was special for us because we were on a 4-week win streak, about to break the old one. The pub had a rule that if you broke the streak, your tab was covered for the whole night. And 4 was the streak for the last 3 years. My friend and his new girlfriend missed the first 2 of the 3 rounds. We were in first place by only 3 points. How trivia worked at the bar was they only had 3 rounds of 30 questions that were displayed on the TV for 1 minute. No cell phone rule. The staff monitored. If they saw a cell phone at the table, they grabbed your sheet and you were out for that round, even if it was often just sitting at the table. They had really cool prizes every week. Anyhow, my friend and his girlfriend showed up for the last round. As I said, she argued every group decided answer. At the end of that round, we were confident we had every question right. Our mistake was my friend's new girlfriend said she'd hand in the sheet. The host, at the end, hands our sheet back. Says we would have won if we didn't change our first answers. We were like, what? He hands the sheet back, and a bunch of our answers are crossed out and changed. Everyone at the table looks at my friend's girlfriend. She was like, I thought I was right and you guys were wrong on most of the answers. so I changed them. The pub never recovered after COVID and shut down, so the streak was never beat. Years went by and she only got worse. Anyways, this is a petty revenge story, not my friend's terrible wife story, and I'm going to fast forward to their wedding gifts. She controlled everything on the wedding. My friend had to argue that she couldn't choose his groomsmen. She literally told him he can pick his best man, but the 6 of his groomsmen had to be her 3 brothers, 2 cousins, and a college friend of hers. The only time he stood up to her and said no. If I couldn't choose my groomsmen, wedding off. Anyhow, after that drama and getting the message that I'm a groomsman, I get an email and a voice message from his fiancée. All gifts have to be off their wedding registry or a minimum of $300 in cash or gift cards of her selected stores. Most of them were for her dogs, like spas, groomers, or apparently dog hotels. Anyhow, I'm a giant nerd, and 6 months before the wedding, I was at a comic book convention. My friend is a big Star Wars fan, and Mark Hamill was there, so my wedding gift was a Rebel helmet signed by Mark Hamill. I told the groomsmen what I had bought, and it spread like wildfire. Apparently, my friend's side of the family didn't like her, and a lot of mutual friends hated the $300 minimum limit. I missed the gift opening because I was hungover, but I found out when I woke up that more than 50% of the gifts for the wedding were Star Wars memorabilia and collector's items. My friend's wife apparently had a mental breakdown. Unfortunately, they're still married, but my friend has a cool man cave in the basement full of Star Wars memorabilia. That's bittersweet, because on one hand, it's really cool that you guys were looking out for him and got him really cool things. Honestly, I think that's pretty cool. But on the other hand, he's married to her, and that sucks. And that trivia story even got my blood boiling. Oh my god. That is though kind of on them, because I would never let the person who spent the entire time at trivia arguing with me on the answers turn them in. That seems like a recipe for disaster, and I get they were probably trying to be inclusive, but oh my god. Alien egg bearer. Nice. Insane coincidence ruins a friendship. This is completely true. The only reason I'm posting it is because it actually happened. I know it's insane and many people will challenge it, but it happened, and if I made it up, it would have a better ending. It happened around 1989 in Alabama. I was about 19 and I had 2 good friends named Brian. I'll call them Good Brian and Bad Brian, BB. I was young and stupid and trusting. So when Bad Brian was getting married, he asked me to use my credit card to secure the hotel room. He promised me they would never charge it. I said okay, but was still suspicious. So I transposed some numbers in the expiration date, close enough where I could say it was an accident. He gets married, and no issue. 2 years later, I bought a BB gun off of a mail order catalog, something like GGG Sales. They're not in business anymore, but they used to sell Freon-powered BB guns. What arrives is the wrong item, and I call them and they don't have them in stock, but I can exchange it for anything else in their catalog. It turns out they were like 45 miles away, which was a neighboring state, Florida. That's around 70 kilometers from my European folks. I drive over there and I'm talking to him, looking at the other things they have while I'm standing there. A guy answers the phone and starts taking an order, and is saying the name while he's writing it down on the form. It's my name, but with an address much closer to Florida than I live. While he's writing down the credit card info, I walk in front of him and put down my driver's license on top of the form. The employee is irritated because he does not realize what I'm trying to show him, and tries to continue with the order. I point to the name on the license, and he stops. I know who it is trying to place an order using my card because I had only given my credit card info to one person. I motion to the man to hand me the phone, and after a little reluctance, he does. And I simply say, "Hi, Brian. What the hell are you doing?" I could almost hear his mind explode as he recognized my voice. I mean, here it was. 2 years later, he decides to use my credit card, and I'm in another state, in that store, at the same time. Picking up the phone. Boom! I tell him I'm going to stop by his house, his new address was on the order form, and I want the original paper he wrote my info down on, and any copies he had. I stopped by, he handed them to me, and it was everything I could do to keep myself from getting physical. The whole time he had a dazed look on his face, like he didn't understand how this happened. I never talked to him again, but half thought of how insane the coincidence was. I just happened to be in the same place at the same time he was using my credit card, and was close enough to hear him say my name. Crazy. I know the revenge was petty, but in my mind I left him with a supernatural fear of me, or at least that there is someone always watching. I guess my only question is why did we establish there were two Brians, good Brian and bad Brian? Like, I get a coincidence like this, while unlikely, is possible. I just don't know why we established there were two Brians. That's probably my biggest hang-up. Did I miss something? Okay, I just figured it out. I checked the comments. It turns out the reason why they included that was just for the simple fact in case their friend they actually like, good Brian, reads the story, that they don't think he's talking about them in terms of bad Brian. So it's really just him making sure that in case the Brian that he likes reads the story, he knows it's not him. That's a really common question in the Reddit comments. That does make a lot of sense. Camp Otter. Neighbor's friend parked in car spot, so I blocked him in and made him apologize. Hopefully this fits here. Used to live in a duplex with a double car park at the end of the driveway. One car spot for each residence. Anyway, neighbor had a friend over and decided they would take the spare spot next to the neighbor's car. I've come home after work to find someone in my car spot, so I did the only logical thing and parked directly behind them, blocking them from being able to reverse out of the tight driveway to go home. Content with my actions, I went inside and told my wife my only hope was that they needed to leave before I did the next morning. Sure enough, about 2 hours later, there was a soft knock at our door, and a very sheepish man tried to explain he didn't realize it was my park and he was very sorry. He asked if I could please move my car. I said sure, and moved so he could leave. Never saw him again. It was extremely satisfying. I only wish I had been outside to see his face when he realized he'd goofed. Honestly, kudos to the guy for realizing he fucked up and wasn't confrontational about it, because in a lot of these instances, it's more common for the person to become confrontational and aggressive over this instead of being, well, apologetic for their fuck up. And in this case, he was apologetic. The car was moved and he was able to leave for the night, and chances are he lives with that for the rest of his life. And chances are he also probably told his friend, aka the neighbor, that, hey, your neighbor blocked me in. And now the neighbor, whenever he has company over, is going to warn their friends not to park in that spot because it's not theirs to park in. Overall, a very sweet and simple revenge, and I'm happy that OP was willing to move their car and they weren't an ass about it when the person who did make the mistake was willing to apologize for it and actually take accountability. Don't forget, this is brought to you by GamerSupps. Use code OZ at checkout. It's basically a caffeine powder that you put in your water, and I actually really like it. I use this on a daily basis. Don't forget that every purchase you make using code OZ directly supports the channel. And if you want a personal recommendation from me, I would either recommend the Soda Pressing Pear or Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are currently my favorite flavors. And as a note, once we sell a certain amount of stuff, I get my own flavor and my own cup. And you all know I'm gonna choose some degenerate shit that's gonna make their PR team squirm. My goal is to make them regret partnering with me. So please, use code OZ at checkout to make my dream come true of making a PR team squirm.